Well, hello everyone. Dan Caldwell here. It's been several days since we were live here on Facebook, and so uh, not try to make any excuses. We've been very busy, had several things going on, but want to greet you this morning and let you know that we hadn't forgotten about you. Okay, and so with that in mind, let's just talk about some scripture references this morning. It's one of my favorite things to do. And so, with that in mind, I'd like to talk about His grace is sufficient. And while you're looking at this, if there's something that I say that you like, or something here that you would like to click on the like button or comment on or share, that would be great as well. Okay? So let's just talk about it. This is really one of my favorite passages of scripture when Paul's talking about his thorn in the flesh. Now that's found in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 7 through 10. Okay? Paul's talking about this thorn in the flesh. There's been a lot of debate over the years about what this thorn was. And just for the record, that's really not the issue today. Okay? That's really not what the issue is at all. It doesn't matter what the thorn was. Whatever it was, Paul considered it as a hindrance. I know you don't have any hindrances in your life, do you? I know that I don't. Right. Not true. In 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 7 through 9, the reason for the thorn, according to Paul, was so he didn't become conceited. So he didn't become conceited. He didn't begin to think more of himself than he ought to. I love that language. He called his thorn a messenger from Satan. Ever felt like you had a messenger or a thorn that was a direct assault from Satan? In fact, according to the scripture, he asked the Lord 3 times to take it away. And finally, the Lord tells him, "My grace is sufficient for you." Did you get it? My grace is sufficient for you. I love that comment. My grace is sufficient for you. Somebody just needs to hear that today. His grace is sufficient for you. In fact, he said, "For my power is made perfect in weakness." Now, there's some things we learn from the text. Instead of getting angry at his thorn and the way it had hindered him, what Paul did is something that we can all learn from. He acknowledged how weak it made him feel. Why? It made him more dependent on God. That's why. The weaker Paul was, the stronger God became in his life. When there is less of you, you leave more room for him. Paul recognized several things. Let me just give them to you real quickly here. Number one, he recognized the opposition was not from God. God wasn't resisting him. God wasn't resisting him at all. It was his grace that was being made perfect in Paul's weakness. Number two, that he must seek God's answer for that problem. Seek God for whatever the answer was to that situation. Sometimes all we do is just complain about the situation or the problem and never ask God for guidance or what he's trying to teach us or train us in. Number three, God's answer was grace. I love that part, don't you? That God's answer to whatever the situation is that my grace is sufficient for you. Not only is it sufficient, it will sustain you. My grace will help you get through to the other side. Number four was grace is perfected in his imperfection. I love that part, don't you? To think about it, that God's grace is perfected in the fact that we're imperfect. You know, we're perfectly imperfect, as a friend of mine says. He should, number five, he should boast about his weakness. If he's not careful, he should boast about his weakness. And if he's not careful, he'll start bragging about his strengths. But what the scripture reference really is telling us is that we should boast about the weakness that we have and not brag about our strengths. I know that goes against the very grain. We're not supposed to tell people where we have shortcomings or where there are failures. Well, the truth of the matter is they already see them, they already know about them. And so, what is wrong with saying, I need help or I need assistance or I have a weakness in this area? Now, you don't say that to everybody, but there are people that are a part of your inner circle that really love you and care for you. That if you were to tell them, I need assistance in this area, I'm weak here, be an accountability partner, pray for me, strengthen me, give me counsel and guidance, then you would find that in that weakness, you become stronger because those around you will gather around you and support you and lift you up. And then the final thing I want to say to you about this particular passage of scripture, the tougher the problem was, the greater the grace of God was. The tougher the problem that Paul suffered, the greater the grace that he received. Several years ago, our oldest son, we found out that he had Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. When we found out it was a life-altering diagnosis, not only it was a life-altering, but we were told that he would probably never make it out of his teens. During that time, I penned a song and wrote a song, and we recorded a song from this passage of Scripture, His grace is sufficient. Now, I'm not going to try to sing it for you, but I do want to give you some of the words. The chorus states that His grace is sufficient for me. Faith in His power is the key. When your ship is sinking on life's troubled sea, then His grace will be sufficient for me. One of the verses, and this is just one of the verses, says, I know how it feels to worry. I know how it feels to question fears. I know how it feels to wonder, Lord, because I do. But your grace will be sufficient to do. I just want to say to someone listening today that whatever you're going through, God's grace is sufficient. It's sufficient to sustain you. It's sufficient to serve you. It's sufficient to help you get through to the other side. For in your weakness, He is made strong. Until the next time, this is Dan Caldwell saying, keep the fire burning. God bless.